Welcome to Truth and Company Boxing Podcast. Tonight we're going to talk about something a little different. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to the boxing news at all, but the word marijuana has been floating around lately in the boxing circuits. So we've decided to bring a man that knows a little bit about boxing and a little bit about marijuana on the show. He had his issues in the past with it as well. Personally, he wouldn't call it an issue. And so we're going to talk about marijuana in boxing. So definitely tune in. We're going to talk about the positives and the negatives and see what you guys got to think. But let me introduce my guest. He's a former professional boxer and now a head coach at Tiger Smalls Boxing. Tiger Smalls himself.
How you doing, champ?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad that you're willing to come on the show and talk about this. Are you burning one right now?
For the occasion, baby. It's only for the occasion.
All right. Well, listen, the reason we decided to talk about this is because recently the boxing fans, if you haven't noticed, a prospect boxer, he's a really good guy, man. I think he's like 9-0, 8-0, somewhere around in there. Keyshawn Davis. Real good kid, man, comes to fight. But here's the thing, is we need to get these laws right, man, because now that marijuana is becoming legal in a lot of the states, the problem with our sport right now is, for example, Keyshawn Davis just fought, and then he was suspended for 90 days by the Texas Boxing Commission after testing positive for marijuana. Well, here's the problem I have with that. He lives in Virginia. He smokes in Virginia. In Virginia, weed is legal to smoke and purchase. So he puts it in his system, goes down to Texas to fight, but then fails the drug test. How is that fair? I mean, so now you're telling me that they have to be clean a certain amount of time before they go fight to a certain state. So in certain states, you're not going to have to worry about, being dirty because they're not testing you. But if you're living in a state like where you're at, California, whatever, and you're smoking, and now you get set up for a fight with your manager and a promoter in a state that doesn't legalize it or doesn't allow it or test for it, now you got to make sure you're clean before you even get there. Otherwise, the fight's going to become a no contest. Now, Keyshawn isn't the only one down in Texas this happened to. It actually happened to heavyweight Chris Arreola. Same situation. He went down there, fought Travis Kaufman, tested positive for marijuana. They gave him, it was initially a split decision. They overturned it, gave him a no decision, 90 days suspension. Same thing Texas gave him. So Texas is a hard-nosed state on this marijuana, but I just want to bring it to some people's attention because, first off, Alaska, California, Colorado, Illinois, Maine, Florida, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, Nevada, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington. None of these states test for it. So
when did this start?
Well, I'm not sure, but I mean, I did some research, and
so the states that you mentioned, they don't test for marijuana at all.
No, they don't test for it. But that's what I'm saying is that's a lot of states. So why are we even dealing with this anymore? That we still have some states like Texas making a big deal over this issue. I mean, and me and you have also discussed in the past about the alcohol issue. If you're going to test for weed and a guy's coming from a state where he can legally smoke it, and then if you're a heavy smoker, it could be in his system for 30 days. So he might have smoked it 30 days ago, got himself in a 4-week training camp, hasn't touched it since, and now he fails the drug test in the fight after he wins. That's not fair. I mean, alcohol too. It still stays in your system. I mean, who's to say that a guy hasn't been having a couple drinks before he steps into the ring? There's no way to prove it.
Well, that was my whole case back in the day, is that a lot of people were ignorant of that fact. They would think that a lot of people were getting in the ring high. Once they said that, you pop positive for cocaine or for any drug, the average fan sometimes would actually think that the fighters are getting in the ring high. You know what I mean? And I never thought that any of the drugs like that should be. First of all, I don't believe that marijuana is a drug, but any of those type of drugs or anything should be even waste. Why should you waste your money to test for those when they're not performance enhancing drugs? They cannot help you win a fight. If anything, they can only hinder you. You know what I'm saying? If you're on that, if you're actually on those drugs as you fight in the ring, they're going to hinder you from winning. So why would you even test for that?
Yeah, I mean, why would anybody smoke ahead of time to go in the ring to fight? Because your reactions are going to be slower. It makes you tired. It makes you hungry. I mean, it doesn't benefit you in any way in a fight. Absolutely not. But I mean, there is some benefits, believe it or not. There is some positives to boxers doing marijuana. I know people are shaking their head right now when I say that, but let me explain. It's an anti-inflammatory, for one thing. It's a pain reliever. Sore muscles and aching joints are most common in boxing. And whenever a pain and injuries, you abstain from punching. Marijuana is a mild painkiller. Actually, what was it? Oh, anti-spasmodic. For a lot of guys that don't understand, when you get muscle cramps, it helps with muscle cramps. A lot of boxers, when you get dehydrated after fights, sometimes they get muscle cramps. So some of them might, smoke one or take an edible or whatever after a fight, and then sleep inducing. Well, a good night's rest is extremely important for people with vigorous workouts and training schedules. And now this is the one that a lot of people, they're going to try to give me crap about, but this is true. It's motivating, believe it or not. Smoking weed is motivating or taking an edible. Now you're going to say to me, what are you talking about? How's that possible? Contrary to popular myth, consuming it doesn't always make you lazy. Used in small and micro doses, THC makes you more focused so that you can stay in the zone through a hard workout.
Not to mention, you're going to be way more imaginative. You're going to be way more creative.
But I mean, here's a lot of people might not know. Bob Arum, one of the biggest promoters in boxing right now, he actually promotes for the benefits of marijuana. He promotes it. We're talking about Bob Arum. Anybody that's even a casual boxing fan knows who Bob Arum is. And Bob Arum is promoting it himself. I mean, now I'm not saying you should go out and smoke it all the time, but I mean, if you can do an edible, at least that's a little different. You're not going to get the tar in your lungs like smoking. But nowadays, I mean, here's a perfect example I found that this is how hypocritical this is. A while back, Dante Wilder, everybody knows who that is, former heavyweight champion of the world, got a suspended jail sentence on a marijuana-related offense in Alabama. But then Mike Tyson, who's out in California, can open, he's opening or he already did open a 40-acre weed farm. So, I mean, we're not on the same page here in the States. It just doesn't make sense.
I believe in some states marijuana is legal, and then federally it's still illegal. I think that's what they're going on. You know what I mean? Federally, it's supposedly because some of the states don't know how to tax it. It's just like when alcohol was illegal at one time.
But I mean, why can't the ones that aren't on board, why can't they talk to the ones that have already done it? They're already getting used to it and say, look, man, give us the secret on how you're doing this so we can change our state into it. How is it going to work? How are you going to make money? Things like that. Why can't, I mean,
because that to me should have nothing to do with fighters, for the simple fact that this is not for the safety of fighters. It shouldn't even be tested for. It's obviously not for the safety of fighters because fighting within itself is not safe. It's not. This is not for us. This is just another way for them to make money. You can't only say that Keyshawn was only was suspended. You got to realize that they might not, talk about it, but he was obviously fine. Don't get it twisted. It's always you follow the money. He was also fine. They took money from him, and and like I said.
And what's bad about that is if anybody watched that fight, you could see the guy was not on drugs. He wasn't high. He won the fight fine. And then you go and take it away and turn it into a no contest. He worked. He trained hard for that win.
Yeah.
I
He's
mean,
a very talented fighter. Very talented.
And unless he's been in trouble before, I haven't heard about it. But he seems like a really nice kid. And he works hard and he's undefeated and he's trying to do something. Him and his brothers, they all box. And to just put a blemish on his record like that, to me, is just kind of ridiculous.
Well, is it a blemish? Is it a blemish? He's still undefeated, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's a no contest. I mean, he actually won that fight. I mean, just people are going to remember that because that's what people like to remember is the drama in our sport. I mean, let's talk about people still remember your stuff back in the days with the high times and how you pissed boxing off, and you've advocated that you've smoked the whole time back in the day when you were training, and then you went on the High Times magazine with your belts and a marijuana leaf, and boxing was furious about that. So,
yeah, they were. I mean, yeah, the WBO was really upset with me. I mean, after that, I couldn't get a fair shake in boxing to save my life. You could go on YouTube and watch a lot of the fights after that, and you'll see me literally beat some of these guys, beat the shit out of them. They would still raise the right there on TV too, on national TV. They would raise the other guy's head. But I mean, it is what it is.
But I mean, do you believe that boxing itself basically blackballed you after that then?
Oh, 100%. 100%. 100% they blackballed me out of that, but right after that. But that was kind of my fault. At the time, I was the one who was handling all my PR and all that. And I really felt that no publicity was bad publicity. So, when High Times came up to me and we discussed it, I didn't think there would be anything wrong with it because, like I said, marijuana is not a performance-enhancing drug. It did not help me win the title. It did not help me do anything in training except relax, like you said, sometimes took care of my nausea. There's a lot of things, like you said, that's beneficial that this leaf does for us. But
yeah, I mean, it helps fighters with anxiety, with depression. I mean, people don't understand. Boxers have a lot of pressure on them, man. They got a team that's counting on them. They got families that are counting on them. They got fans that are counting on them. Promoters, managers. They got to go out there and perform, man. Sometimes, they're overexcited to get out in the ring. Sometimes they're depressed with all the stuff coming down on them. I mean, just to switch it up a little bit, like, okay, you went on High Times and you showed weed, but now why isn't there a big deal? I mean, what if you would have did an alcohol commercial or showed a bottle of booze? They wouldn't have said anything about that.
Well, yeah, exactly, because you could tax it, and it's legal. Like I said, we should get away from the fact of any drug. If they're not going to, they shouldn't be testing for anything but steroids. If you're stupid enough to get in there like on heroin, do it. For real. I mean, it's not going to help you. What are we testing for it for? What are you serious? That's the more you test for, the more money that it's costing. So they're spending this money. Pardon me?
Oh, I was going to say, well, how many fighters do you think have actually gone in there, though, under the influence of cocaine, though? I mean, I'm sure there has been. I mean, some fighters have been found out to have been using it. Not recently, but I mean in the past.
Right. I personally, I don't think that that's a good look. I think that you could die like that. If you're fighting on cocaine, like I said, I still don't think that's for the benefit of the fighter. If he's going to fight on cocaine, let me tell you a story, and this is a true story. And I knew for a fact, I don't know what it was, but I knew for a fact it was something. We were in TJ and my son was fighting. He broke his hand on this fight, and my son was fighting, and his opponent stood right next to me. And I'm not going to mention which one because we fought in Tijuana several times. But one of the fights, he stood right next to me and he sniffed something. My son wasn't there, and I looked right at him. He didn't give a shit. And I knew since we were in TJ, I said, well, if I tell them the commission, they're going to say, so what do you want to do? You want us to fight on or to fight off? Do you want to fight or not? It was, they're not going to do all the bullshit like, oh, we're going to test them. Do you want to fight or not? So, and I knew not to tell my son because I didn't want to get in his head. My son beat him, whatever. But what I'm trying to say is maybe it can have you, get, because that guy, he did go the distance and he was, he took a lot of good punches. Maybe it can help you like that. But at the end of the day, like I said, I don't think that helped him. For one, it didn't help his skills. He still got his ass whooped. Only thing I think it did was raise his heart even more. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, that's going to be detrimental to them. They could die in the ring if they're on cocaine or any of that type of shit.
But I mean,
and I know they had, huh?
Oh, go ahead, finish.
And I know that, like you said, that they had other fighters, back in the day that they accused of being on cocaine, like my man Purnell or even Aaron Pryor or something like that. But man, dude, I mean, that is not going to make you more skillful. It's not going to help your endurance. Like I said, the only thing it can help you do is race your heart, make your adrenaline goes more, and that's bad for you. I like I said, I don't even see why they would test for cocaine, but if they do, that's an illegal substance. They continue to do it. I don't want anybody to say that I'm saying that is great, good to do that, but at the end of the day, my point is, why are we testing these athletes for that when it's not beneficial for them? It's not going to help them win anything. It's not going to help them win. Let's test them for the things that they're taking, these high-tech things like these real rich guys that are taking, that's still getting away with it. Let's test that shit. Let's find a way to pop these guys that's really taking performance enhancement drugs, and you're looking at their heads getting bigger and bigger.
So let me ask you something, because obviously you've been all over the place. You fought all over the place. Just so the fans understand this, because so when you go to a card, now every state is probably different, but they don't just line all you guys up and make you all take a urine test. It doesn't work that way. It's randoms, correct? So
right.
How do they decide to do the randoms? How are the randoms picked at a card?
Well, first of all, just to go back to my career, and I'll go to now. My career, when I fought, after I fucked up and did that high times, I was always randomly picked when I fought. That's first of all. So
that don't sound random.
Exactly. So I was going to get tested regardless. But now, I believe if it's a title fight, you're going to get tested, not randomly. It might be randomly when they show up, because you might get tested a few times. But if it's just a regular local card and it's out here in California or Nevada, they take I think 2 or 3 fighters off the card. And how it works, I really don't know. It's really random. Like they really, it's usually the main event. It's usually one of the main events. The main event, because if you get tested, your opponent got to get tested. But, it's really random. Like you never know until the day of the fight too. Like they might do it at the weigh-in, but usually you walk in the day of the fight and they when you go in the locker room, they be like, you come here.
But you don't know the random system that they use. It's not like they write on everybody's name and put it in a hat and just pick 2 guys.
No,
out, right? I mean,
no, not at all. No, it's really random. It's really random. But I'm saying if you're going to be at a main event championship level, keep yourself clean because you're going to get tested.
But see, I just want to, so fans understand the World Anti-Doping Agency. I read this little paragraph that they put out, and I just want to read. It says, the World Anti-Doping Agency that sets an example for other sports organizations has 3 reasons to prohibit a recreational drug from athletes. When it endangers the athlete or other participants of the competition. Okay, we doesn't do that. When it enhances performance, we doesn't do that. And when it uses the incapable with the image of an athlete as a role model. Okay, so that's where they're
really for real?
Yeah, see, and that's where they're trying, and that's where they're going to get people on. Because if they claim that you're out there as a pro boxer and people are looking up to you and you're in commercials or you're doing signings or you got kids looking up to you, you're a role model, whether you like it or not.
Right.
So
That's true.
And that's how they're gonna. But see, the first two reasons the weed doesn't fall under, but they get you on the role model thing.
But I mean, you know, due to the fact that it's legal in most or a lot of states, you know, they really can't even do the role model type of thing because you have a lot of role models that openly smoke weed. You know, from your Snoop Dogs, you know, to Bob Marley's. Come on, man, stop playing with me. All these musicians and all the Mike Tyson. Even come on, you know, all these role models right now. We're in 2023. That so they can't really even say that because there's too many A-list celebrities that's letting it be known that they do indulge in marijuana. So I think that could be
And I'm
disputed
just
too.
gonna throw this other little factoid out there for the fans too. So basically, around 30 states now. There's only 50 states. Around 30 states have legalized cannabis distribution, while 16 U.S. states and D.C. have legalized the recreational use of cannabis, and 37 states plus D.C. allow it consumption for therapeutic purposes. The substance and the plant it's derived from are still illegal on the federal level, though. So, I mean, it's such a mess, dude. It really is, dude. It sounds like they don't even know what they want to do.
I'm just glad I'm in California.
But but see, that's the problem I see with this whole thing that started again with Keyshawn and down in Texas. I mean, how to me, what really bothers me is you're making it look bad on a fighter that seems to be a clean guy, a good role model. His whole family is into the fighting business. He's undefeated, and now you got people wondering about this guy. You know, speculating. Oh, does he sit around? Does he smoke weed all day? Does he do this? All that isn't even necessary because he's allowed to smoke it where he lives. It's legal in the state he lives in. So, I mean, he could have smoked it 30 days prior to that fight. We don't know how often he smokes it. It stays in his system, in his tissue, and then he failed. It could have been almost out of his system for all we know. We don't know how much came up in that urine test or whatever. But to me, it's ridiculous that we even spend time in the boxing news on something so trivial.
I agree 100%. 100%. I think that I guess you have a point when you're saying like, well, if you come from a state that it's legal, you should be, you know, I guess, you know, you should go under those laws. However, I mean, when you look at it from their perspective too, it's like, you know, if you're from another state and then you commit a crime in this state, it doesn't matter if you're from that state and it's legal, you're now in this state, you know. So
Yeah, but that'd be different. If you would have went down to Texas and he smoked it in their state the night before that fight and they found out about it, then that's different. But to me, you have to if this is the game they're going to play where some states are legal and some states aren't, then the sport has to adjust their
that
conditions to
I
that.
want 100%, 100%.
So when they match up a guy, they have to say, okay, wait a minute, he's from a state where he can legally smoke weed. Then we're not going to test him because he's probably going to fail. There's a chance he'll fail, and they have to say if he does fail, we have to consider what state he came from, and if it's from a legal weed state, then we can't punish him because he already came with it in his system. Now, if the guy comes from a state that isn't legalized, then he should get suspended because he already smoked it in a state that wasn't legalized, and then you came to a state that wasn't legalized. But they need to figure out a system because that's really not fair. That if one guy comes from a state, like I said, perfect example, he came from Virginia. It's legal there. So he's already got it in his system, and then all of a sudden the promoters or the manager calls him up and says, hey, we got a fight for you. Do you want to sign a contract? Where's the contract? In Texas. the first thing on his mind is not, oh, I can't go fight in Texas because they're going to test me for weed and I just smoked it last week. No fighter is thinking like that, because half of the fighters probably don't even know which state it's legal in and which states it aren't. So nobody wants to focus on that when they're getting ready for a fight. That, oh, I smoked it in my hometown where I can smoke it, but, oh, we have to turn down that fight because they're going to find me dirty because it's not legal in their state. Otherwise, we're going to have tons of fighters turning down fights just over the fact that they already got marijuana in their system. That's ridiculous.
That is. That's one. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
So, I mean, they really need to take a look at this. If we're going to progress more as a society, and more and more states every year or every couple of years are legalizing this, then they got to start changing the rules. They got to, progress with the times.
The real bad news, too, about this whole thing is that when you get suspended in one state, you're suspended. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Like he can't fight nowhere.
Well, the problem is he already had another fight lined up, too. And now for I think it was December 9th. And now that fight got canceled. So now on top of it, he loses money.
Right.
Yeah, which is not fair, because if he smoked in his own state where it was legal, he should not be punished for that. Technically, he didn't do anything wrong.
Well, he didn't do anything illegal.
Yeah, he didn't do anything illegal.
But
I mean, it was in his system in Texas, but Texas, I mean, that's what I'm saying is these guys got to get together and communicate and say, okay, we're asking this guy to come fight in our state. We know he's from a state where he's allowed to smoke marijuana. So then people need to communicate and say to him, we want you to come on the card, but here's our deal. Have you smoked anything in the last 30 days? Because we're going to test you. And if he says, no, I haven't, and then he fails, then that's on him because he's out lied. But if he says, well, yes, I already have it in my system, do you still want me to come on your card and fight? Well, then he was honest about it, and he already told them. And they already are aware that he smoked it 2-3 weeks prior to the card. So then if he takes a test and he fails, they should just get rid of the test because they were already told about it ahead of time. But they got to come up with a system, because right now, this system they got is ridiculous, and it's making fighters look bad when, and to the fans don't care. Fans love drama, and it will crucify you off of some shit that you might not even have did purposely. They love drama. They don't want everybody to stay on top. They kick you when you're down. They love you when you're on top. I mean, look at how many fighters are out there on Skid Row and got nothing, and fans don't even care about them anymore. But when they were making money and they were, helping all the fans have a good time, the fans loved them. Now half of these guys got no money, they got nothing, and nobody gives a shit about them.
Word. But what are the people saying about what is the feedback that you're hearing?
Actually, I mean, a lot of the social media feedback is what we're talking about it right now. Basically, is they think it's bullshit that Keyshawn got suspended. I mean, we got to get with the times.
Okay.
I mean,
either
either say it across the board that every state still is going to test for it, and this is the situation, and then every fighter's already been informed of it. So then if every fighter comes and shows up on a show and they fail, you already knew about it. But you can't have it is not a fighter's job to sit there and go, okay, can I take a fight on this card? Let me think, because I don't know if that state has legalized marijuana and I smoke marijuana and my state allows me to smoke it. No fighter is going to sit there and think about that every time they take a fight, and they shouldn't have to. I mean, that's just, they have enough things to worry about in their camp and getting prepared for a fight, whether they're going to fail a marijuana test in a different state because they don't know if that state's legalized or not.
Oh, shit. And Keyshawn, he kind of fights back to back too, right? He fights pretty regularly.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is he just fought, just like 2 weeks ago or something? I think it was like 2 weeks. And he was supposed to fight next month already, and now they canceled the fight on him. So, I mean, I don't know how big his contract is or how much money he's making, but I'm sure he's making a nice little chunk that he just lost over just failing
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure.
I mean, I'm sure he's not in a six-figure bracket yet, but still, could be $20,000-$30,000 that just cost him over a urine test. I don't know. To me, it's silly. I mean, he knows. Listen, like I said, he's from a background. He's from a fighting family. His brothers, his managers, his dads. They know what the deal is. So if they really thought it was going to be that big of a deal, they would have informed him ahead of time. Look, man, you gotta stay clean for like 60 days or something. But obviously, nobody else thought it was going to be an issue either. I mean, I don't. He's not running around with a bunch of guys that don't know the sport. They know the sport. They know. So I mean, to me, like I said, he's not the only one that's been caught down in Texas like that either. Chris Arreola went through the exact same thing, 90-day suspension, same thing. And where's Chris Arreola from? California, where you're allowed to smoke weed. So it was the same thing. Smoke weed in your home state, go somewhere else where they don't have it legalized, and now you fail a drug test. That's not right.
Well, what do we do from here? Do you protest that? What do? You get see that's boxing is non-protesting. Like you can't overturn shit in boxing. Nothing has ever been overturned.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing in boxing too. That okay, first of all, we're not like all the other sports. We don't have one commissioner, which would have been great if boxing did, because there'd be a lot of things different if we had one commissioner like all the rest of the pro sports. But each state has its own commission, so each commission has to deal with their own state and make their own rules. But there's no unity with boxers though, with pro boxers. Why have they not started their own, basically almost like a union? You know what I mean? Why has nobody started this and said, look, we need to band together for each other and tell these promoters and these places or whatever and say, look, here's the deal, man. You guys can't keep taking our money out of our pockets because you think we did something that we didn't actually do. I mean, to me, there just needs to be boxers need to start standing up more for themselves. I mean, it's already bad enough that a lot of them get taken advantage of. Perfect example, Mike Tyson. You surround yourself with a team. You trust your team to handle your business, your finances, whatever. But some of those team members have their own agendas. They're just following on your coattails to make $1. And the minute you start losing or start running into situations with the law or failing drug tests, then they're skimming or they're out of there or they're trying to get a few extra bucks because they think that, the train's about to end. So, I mean, it's just hard, man. I mean, you've been in it long enough. It's hard to trust anybody in this sport. I mean, I've been burned in this sport. I'm sure you've been burned in this sport. I know a lot of other people that have been burned in this sport. It's hard to trust people in this sport. And the problem is a lot of people are out for themselves. If you can't even trust your own team, how the hell can you trust a promoter or somebody else outside of your team?
Oh yeah, no doubt. You can't. Yeah,
and now
it's very hard to trust.
Yeah, but today
you got to realize
social media is even worse because now you got your teammates like using their phones and videotape you doing stuff in the locker room or in the gym or sparring, and then they're leaking the shit on social media. That's your own teammate. That's your own guy, your own manager, your own fighter that you spar with, whatever, just to try to get ahead. You can't even trust, people in your own gym anymore.
True that. I just hope, like right now, that they maybe, think about, what's going on, because with this case, they didn't really, it's not really big. It's not big. If it was really big, I think.
But it was big enough to waste people's time and throw in the news, though.
It was. But if it was like a Canelo, if it was a Gervonta Davis, if it was somebody huge in this sport right now, and I think Keyshawn will get there because he's talented. But if it was like one of those two right now, and it was that, I think something would be done.
Well, I honestly think the only reason they did bring it up is because, like I said, yes, Keyshawn Davis is not at the level of those guys you just mentioned yet, and he will be one day, but he is a prospect. And that's why they
Right.
brought it up, because they know he's good. They know he's going to be good. He comes from a fighting family. Two of his brothers fight too. So his name is out there. It is slowly becoming a
But
household name.
imagine in today's age suspending Canelo for marijuana for 30 days. I mean, for 90 days, finding him in Texas. Imagine that happening.
Well, I mean, the whole thing with Canelo with those enhancements, and he denied and he still denies, but I don't know the whole situation with that either. But like you said, they brought up his name, man, and oh my God, everybody was talking about that for months. I mean,
You
yeah,
got to realize, you got to realize a person like Canelo is bigger than boxing right now. Showtime has nothing to do with boxing.
no,
But
you're right.
Showtime still is going to have Canelo's fights. His next two fights that's guaranteed is going to be on Showtime pay-per-view. But Showtime has nothing to do with boxing, but it has something to do with Canelo.
Are
So
you
like I
sure?
said,
Wait a minute. I thought Canelo was signed with the Zone. Canelo's one of the Zone's guys.
do your homework. His next two, he do your homework and then come back and tell me if I'm right, because I know I am. Canelo's fights will be on Showtime pay-per-view.
Really?
What was his last fight on?
Well, I don't know. I don't remember, but I know he was
Huh.
signed with. I know he was signed with the Zone. Maybe he's not anymore.
That kind of fell through, brother.
Okay. So you got any more? You got anything more to say on the weed topic while you're over there smoking?
Well, I'm almost I'm almost done, but yeah, no, the only thing is that I really feel like, I've been saying this for a long, long time, and I'm glad now that it's coming, like this generation is seeing it, because when I went through it, you know, a lot of people wanted to front. A lot of people was in denial, like, nah, same motherfuckers that were smoking would tell me, "Oh man, you shouldn't do that," and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, what? But I'm glad that more people are seeing in today's world that is bullshit. And I think now that you said about, boxers should come together, I think that's something that's important. But I'm glad that people are seeing it right now. That's my main thing, is that people are seeing it, because people was ignoring it back in my day. People was ignoring that bullshit. And it's just a scheme for them to get more money and to, this is have nothing to do with the safety of the fighters, and the fighters are definitely not cheating by smoking fucking marijuana. They're not cheating. This is not a cheating thing. So,
No, I'm
I'm
like we
happy that,
brought up. There's actually some positives.
yeah.
Anti-inflammatory. It's a pain reliever. It relaxes you. It helps anxiety. It helps
What
depression. It
what
helps
we
cramps.
need, like, we need a lawyer. We need a lawyer. We need someone to say that shit to the public, on record somehow, and have it filed. That's what you're saying is so true, but it's got to be documented. It just can't be in discussion. It's always in discussion, between us, between boxing fans and between boxing, historians, but not really to where it matters. We have to hit the sources, and like you said, this is more about, them, like I said, getting money from us, I think.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at all the issues in the sport of boxing compared to the other professional sports, like I said, we don't have one commissioner. We don't have a health plan for the boxers that retire. I mean, there's too much backstabbing going on, too much stealing each other's fight. There's so many issues in the sport right now. People getting underpaid. The female boxers aren't getting paid enough. I mean, I could go on and on all day, and we're worried about who's smoking weed. Seriously?
You think female boxers are underpaid?
I do. I do nowadays. I absolutely do.
Clarissa Shields and them, they don't make good money, you don't think?
I don't.
I
I don't
never.
think they don't make the level that the guys are making. And they've been actually becoming main event fighters. There was that
Yeah, no
all-woman
doubt, no
card.
doubt.
They did
They
that
don't. I didn't know
all-women's
that.
card overseas. So I mean, and now they're talking about doing 3-minute rounds. Possibly they've been trying it out a little bit, but it's just that I mean they need to get paid more too.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought
we're
Clarissa
never.
Shields got paid.
Well, no, because I've heard her complaining about it. So no, I mean Amanda Serrano. I mean she's probably getting paid more than she was now that Jake Paul took over and is helping her or whatever. But it's just all the women aren't getting paid like they should. I'm not saying they should get paid, but the ones that are doing main events.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean Amanda Serrano, Clarissa Shields, Katie Taylor. I mean some of these guys got to be getting They got to be getting
no doubt.
big money by now. They're drawing people to the sport. A lot of girls are getting involved in boxing because of these women and their role models. They're out doing things and commercials and whatever and magazines and everything. They should be getting money.
No doubt.
All right. Anyways, listen, I'm about to close for the night on the subject of marijuana and boxing. The man that knows boxing and marijuana probably more than anybody in this sport. You got one last thing to say on the subject?
Nah, man, just if you go to Texas, make sure you're clean, obviously, and make sure if you're fighting and you go to any of these states that's testing, make sure you check it out before you go, or buy some synthetic piss. You're
all right. So basically, if you got them, burn them. And
that's
with
right.
that, the truth has spoken.